Hi, everybody, and welcome to the 10th edition of All Things Aviation. So yes, this is still a fairly new program, and as I like to say, a work in progress. You can probably tell by some of the technical challenges from time to time. As most of you are aware, the primary goal of All Things Aviation is to introduce all aspects of aviation and aerospace to aspiring aviators, to those currently studying aviation, but not sure what they want to do in the industry, and for the middle schooler and high schoolers who have aviation kind of on what we would call their radar, but not sure how to apply their current skill set to the industry. Of course, that's the beauty of aviation and aerospace, whether you're technically inclined, mechanically inclined, a natural with math and physics and all that kind of STEM stuff, not my cup of tea, but I'm good with the stick, or just know that physically flying an aircraft has always been in the cards for you. This program will hopefully open your eyes to possibilities, opportunities, and options to consider. So air traffic control. There have been a few good movies dramatizing it, like Die Hard 2, it's a favorite of mine. Airport 75, that goes back a ways, to name a few. And then, of course, classics like Pushing 10. That said, our air traffic control system here in the United States is envied worldwide as one of the best, and we pilots in particular have a great appreciation for air traffic control. Nate, I'm sure you're glad to hear that. Granted, we have our moments, but rely heavily on good traffic management to ensure our safety and therefore the safety of those flying with us. So today, we hope to provide insight on what air traffic control is and does, and what opportunities exist, and how air traffic control relates to being a professional pilot, a pilot in general, as well as the importance of the impact of modern avionics from companies like Garmin International, who we have present today, that make flying and communicating with air traffic control seamless. It's funny that in your early stages of flying, initially learning how to communicate with air traffic control can be scary to many, but also comes naturally to some. Personally, I memorized the phonetic alphabet when I was about 10 years old. Yes, unusual kid. So I was able to handle the radios on my very first flight lesson, but full disclosure, I've been monitoring aviation frequencies for probably 6 or 7 years by the time I took my first flight lessons. So that definitely helped. Moving along, today's panel of seasoned aviation professionals include Nate Peters. Nate is currently a supervisor of traffic management at the Washington Air Route Traffic Control Center, based in Leesburg, Virginia, better known as Washington Center, or as some of us pilots call it, Zulu Delta Charlie. For obvious reasons centered around having lots of secure areas in the region, Washington Center is one of the busiest and one of the most complicated air traffic facilities in the country. Nate is a 26-year air traffic control veteran, and he's going to tell us more about all that air traffic control entails beyond just what we think in terms of just seeing the tower, and for us pilots, talking to center and approach, et cetera, and so forth. Nate, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Good morning.
And then we have a good friend of mine, Jonathan J.J. Greenway, or everybody knows him by J.J. J.J.'s been on the show before. He was on earlier in the season. J.J. is a retired American Airlines captain who now flies corporate and contract in the business aviation world. J.J. has logged over 16,000 hours. I think he said 16,200 in a couple of minutes to be exact. He is type rated in everything from a Boeing 757 and Boeing 767, as well as the McDonnell Douglas DC-9, to Cessna Citation XL, Dassault Falcon, the 2000 Easy, the Falcon 7X, one of my favorites, and Falcon 900 Easy. I do believe that qualifies JJ to speak a little bit about air traffic control experiences. Again, welcome back to the program, JJ.
Thanks very much, Vince. I appreciate you having me.
Great to have you here. And we have Bill Stone. Bill is the Senior Business Development Manager at Garmin International over in Kansas. And Bill said it's nice over in Kansas right now. Must be having good weather over there. Bill is a 40-year industry veteran whose focus at Garmin has been on all aspects of aviation product development, avionics product development, specific to general aviation, business aviation, commercial aviation, and military aviation. So it sounds like Bill has had a full plate there at Garmin. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Vince. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. And with regard to our aspiring young aviation professionals, we have back from a previous show, Brandon. Oh, Brandon, I was going to check with you. Is it Babber or Baber?
It's Baber, Vince.
It is Baber. I
Yes,
wanted
sir.
to double check with you because it's been a while and I totally knew I was going to mess that up. Anyhow, we have Brandon Baber. Brandon just recently graduated back in June from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University at Daytona Beach. He has completed his multi-engine training, which he did earlier this year, and is currently a certified flight instructor, allowing him to do flight training. It's been a bit of a challenge as of late because of COVID-19. So I don't think you've been doing a whole lot of instructing right at the moment. Am I right about that?
No, sir. No, I haven't
Yeah.
been doing anything at the
But
moment.
Brandon has been working, and he is also currently enrolled for his master's degree. So he's working on the master's program there at Embry-Riddle. And welcome back to the show, Brandon.
Hey, thanks, Vince. It's always fun to be here. Appreciate y'all calling me back again.
And finally, we have Shane Drury. Shane, he's the young buck of the group. He's currently a junior at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University at Daytona Beach, and he's pursuing a degree in aeronautical science and into the flight program. One thing that's notable about Shane is that he started learning to fly by joining the Civil Air Patrol. Personally, I think that's pretty cool. It's a great program, particularly for aspiring aviators, and it's a great way to kind of get started and hang out around airplanes, et cetera, and so forth. So Shane, hats off for you to you for that, and welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate you having me.
It's great to have you guys with us today, and really looking forward to having this conversation. Air traffic control is something that we deal with all the time, and it's a big part of our flying, but it's not something that we often talk about as a career and the different opportunities. So I'm kind of going to start it off by throwing it Nate's way. And Nate, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got started in air traffic, and what you do as of late.
Okay, I went to Delaware State University in Dover, Delaware. Majored in airway science. They have a air traffic management side of it, and they have a pilot side of it. They have about I guess about 4 or 5 aircraft and 1 multi. When I was there, I was a co-op student. I co-opted at Philadelphia International for 1 year, and then I went on to the FAA Academy, where they train air traffic controllers for about 3-4 months, and then went to Washington Center and stayed at Washington Center for the last 26 years. 10 years as a controller, 4 years as the air traffic management coordinator, 4 years as a frontline manager, and 8 years as a supervisor of traffic management. There's 3 levels of 3 options in air traffic. You got the center option, which there's about 21 centers in the country, and you have the approach control or TRACON option, and you have the tower option, and there's another option called flight service, but that's been contracted out probably about 17, 18 years ago. And that's it.
Gotcha. Well, that's quite a history. So how are things these days? We were talking a little earlier. Air traffic is a great career, but it has slowed down in terms of, there's not a lot of airline flight, and the business aviation has picked back up. So there's ups and downs with it. What's your perspective on it?
Yes, there is. It's based, and some of it, a lot of it's based on the economy. Economy and other things are. It kind of dictates the traffic volume that we receive. At this time, COVID, we used to run about 7,000 operations a day at Washington Center. We're down to about 4,000 operations a day. Most of our New York market is what's missing, I guess. We still have Atlanta and Charlotte markets are still almost the same, but the New York market is the market that has not returned yet.
Gotcha. Well, let me do this. JJ, you have done every kind of flying possible for a long time. Can you give us a pilot's perspective as to how you look at air traffic? And you also are a flight instructor, so you teach as well. So what's your take on it in terms of it as it relates to flying?
Well, it's funny. We were just talking before the show, Vince, about the strike, the air traffic controller strike 40 years ago. I got to thinking after that, and there were
what, Nate, 14,000 controllers that were out of a job. Several other countries started hiring U.S. controllers that were out of work because they were not they were on strike or terminated actually after the strike. So I noticed that air traffic control in countries that typically had pretty poor service all of a sudden got a lot better. Mexico used to be notorious for air traffic control that was, shall I say, sketchy at best. Brazil was the same. And after these US controllers started filtering into these other countries and getting hired, I would say overall the quality of air traffic control throughout the world got much better. And I thought that was kind of interesting because air traffic controllers in the US are so disciplined compared to a lot of other countries. Of course, 711065 is your Bible, and controllers follow it to the letter. And I found that interesting in the 80s and 90s that the US system kind of filtered into the whole world because of that.
Yeah. Nate, what does it take to become an air traffic controller? In your opinion, what do you guys look for when you're doing new hires and looking for the next set of controllers to come in?
Well, multitask, and I want to shed light on, to be an air traffic controller, you do not need a 4-year degree. I guess we went into, you do not 2-year degree. I see people off the street, I see people from the military, and I see people with 4-year degree. Now, when I first got in, I say the majority of the controllers were ex-military. And then kind of went towards the college initiative programs, the 2 years and the 4 years. But you don't necessarily need a college degree to become an air traffic controller. Multitask, I find that a lot of athletes are good controllers because they multitask as athletes. So it takes about, once you don't really need that much experience, technical experience, because once you spend the 4 months at Oklahoma City at the academy, you learn pretty much, they teach you from the ground floor on up. And then once you get to your facility, it takes about 2.5, 3 years before you become a full performance controller. So the training is all hands on, and you don't necessarily need a large aviation background in order to do it.
Yeah, that's interesting what you said about being able to multitask, and athletes do that, particularly depending on the sport and that type of thing. So that's an interesting analogy. Shane, Brandon, do either of you have questions regarding opportunities in air traffic control?
Yeah, I guess starting out, I mean, I considered air traffic control as maybe a minor, to caveat off the pilot knowledge and the certificates I'm going for. So I've considered it, and I guess I'm curious about kind of like what the work life is like for a ATC, someone there. How many days a week do they work? How many hours a day? I always hear rumors that it's so mentally tasking and so much focus it takes that you do like 30 minutes on, 15 minutes off. Curious kind of what the day in the life is like for ATC.
Well, you're right. You don't. It's a job that you work. You're working 8 hours, but you probably only work 50% of the 8 hours because you're not on position for 8 hours. You're probably on position out of the 8. You're probably on position maybe 4 or 5 hours a day. So that's kind of the typical day of an air traffic controller. At some days you work longer than that. Some days you may work less than that. Depends on the volume. The volume and what's going on dictates how long you're going to be on position. So,
what truth is there to the 30 minutes on, 15 minutes off, or how does that rotation work?
No, that's not how. No, that's just rumor. Now, if you told me 2 hours on and 45 minutes off or half an hour off, I would say, yeah, that's probably more like it, more realistic.
And I asked because something told me that couldn't be right. I thought I'd ask you.
No, and then you have one of the great things about it is, what I liked about it is the retirement. It has a 25-year retirement. You have to go at the age 56. So if you start your career in your early 20s, you'll be eligible to retire in your late 40s. That's usually how it goes. You can work to 56 on the boards, or you can work in management after 56. So, but most people go between that 50 and 56 range, they retire. So, and it's a great retirement to go along with it. So,
Shane, you're in your third year of school, and you're on track for your aeronautical science degree, et cetera. And so air traffic, what's air traffic control? Do you have a question about it, or is it something that you would consider as a alternate while you're working your way towards your professional pilot career?
Yeah, I've definitely always been interested in that aspect, and exactly like what goes on the other side, just to kind of be more more knowledgeable as a pilot, knowing that aspect of it as well. So it's definitely definitely been an interest. And I was just I was going to ask a question to Nate, like what do y'all look for when you select like a controller? Like, does it help to have a 4-year degree? Is that like a leg up, or what what kind of things do y'all look at when you accept controllers like into the program?
the FAA has kind of evolved because, like I said, when I first came along, they had a co-op program, which was a great program while you're in school. You kind of took school off. You took a year off of school to work in the field. They kind of did away with a lot of those college initiative programs, and they kind of lumped everyone into taking a test and kind of scoring a test and then getting hired. I don't know the politics behind that, but that's kind of how it evolved. And then they were at one situation or one stages in the FA, they were hiring people directly from the military. So you still have some military controllers, military background controllers that still come through. I used to say that they were the strongest controllers at one point, the ones that had the military background, and because they were more mature. I would say also because you had the college kids that were they weren't as mature as the military guys. So it has its stage, it has its leagues. You have your larger facilities and you have the lower level facilities. I would say the larger facilities like Washington Center, Atlanta Center, Chicago, Dallas, Fort Worth. Those are the busier centers. You have your busy approach controls and you have your little towers. So it kind of ranks. You have the major leagues, you have the minor leagues. It depends on how you where you start off. Some people start off in the major leagues. Some people start off in the minor leagues. But you can work your way through it, work your way up with experience. So.
Nate, what do you guys look for when after you've gained some experience as a controller, when you're aspiring to a management level or supervisory level? What, besides the experience, what are the characteristics you guys look at?
I guess experience. Some of that experience plays a lot in it, and some managers work multi areas. Because inside of Washington Center, you got 6 like mini centers within, because you have 6 areas of Washington Center that work different parts of the airspace. And some people go to one area, then they go to another area to learn that flow or that traffic. And that's a good skill set to have by working more than just one area.
Yeah, not to put you on the spot, but Brandon brought up a good point. Generally, it's a kind of a pressure environment controlling aircraft, especially in a area like Washington Center region. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is, or ask about is, I would think that the ability to manage people in terms of the psychological aspect is important too, because people are under the gun, and you've got to keep everybody kind of even tempered, although controllers tend to be that way because it's kind of part of the business. Can you speak on that?
Adaptability is key, as far as being flexible too. And I mean, when I say being flexible, you may come up with a plan A, B, you may be down to plan C. And pretty much two-way communication, feedback is a key, because you have to process what people are telling you and what's going on, and make a decision right away. And the decision you make may not be the best decision. You may have to work with that decision.
Yeah. Gotcha. So we're all pilots here, and we've all had our various experiences and at different levels with air traffic, whether it's just a fun flight or whether we're flying on instrument rules. flight rules and that type of thing, which brings us to the avionics or technical side of it. All of us have experienced in one form or fashion working with like Garmin avionics. Oh, we have a guy from Garmin International. How convenient to be able to talk about it. And by the way, I'm going to digress, and I'm going to ask our viewers if any of them can tell if that is a real background for where he is. I probably gave it away by the way I just said that, so never mind. But anyhow, pretty cool background there. Bill, again, welcome to the program. And Bill, Garmin plays a really large role in the avionics aspects of flying with all kinds of different configurations of Garmin avionics, whether it's for a small plane all the way up to, you know, a large jet, and then also in helicopters and that type of thing. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background and all of the things that Garmin does and how that affects the efficiency with air traffic control?
Sure, Vince. You know, I started out in aviation early in my life. You know, got private license at 19 and was in the military for a while. And after I got out of the military, then started at another avionics company. And a very common theme, you know, back at that point in time in the 70s and 80s, and some of us can remember back there, the avionics equipment was extremely antiquated. If you can picture all the knobs and dials in a World War II airplane, and there really hadn't been much change, much advancement at that point in time. And to aviate, similar to air traffic control, you had to come up with a mental picture of where you were going, and not very friendly, if you will. And especially if you know, you went under instruments where you couldn't see the ground anymore, and trying to navigate with VOR and ADF and these ground-based nav aids. And
ADF, how accurate?
Yeah, it's you're somewhere in the vicinity of a fix, right? And again, it took all this mental gymnastics to come up with this information. Imagine air traffic control if they had no radar or anything else, and just listening to pilot reports of where they think they are, and you know, trying to come up with an orderly flow of traffic. So something that I took personal, and many folks that I work with, was how can we bring technology to advance so many aspects of aviation, from flying an airplane accurately to navigating very accurately, effective communication with air traffic control, all these different aspects, and weather detection. And so this has been a large part of my career, is advancing these technologies and getting them affordable and getting them into a wide range of aircraft, all the way down to little Cessna 172s, and bringing some good technology. And by doing this, it makes the pilot safer.
Absolutely.
He can aviate, navigate, communicate much more effectively, but he can also work with air traffic control much more effectively. Air traffic control is the pilots sometimes don't like the word control because we don't like to be controlled, right? And they're not really controlling. They're not really controlling traffic, but what they're trying to do is come up with a very safe, efficient, and orderly movement of airplanes through the national airspace system.
I think that brings up a really good point, and I'm going to interrupt just a sec for Nate. Has technology, have you, over the years, with the improvement of technology in aircraft and the modernization of avionics in aircraft, also been very helpful to air traffic from your perspective? Air traffic management?
Absolutely, because when I started, even the separation standards, if we want to go there, it used to be 2,000 feet separation, and now it's 1,000 feet above, at certain levels. So, yeah, so it's getting better. It seems like it's getting better as we go along. in the traffic management portion, there's different things that next gen projects that improving the way we work traffic in and out of the area. So it is improving.
Yeah, and JJ, from you've flown everything from the little Garmin box all the way to the Garmin G5000 suite in a sophisticated jet. What's your take on that?
Well, the human is the weakest link in the chain. I was laughing at myself. A recent flight I had, it wasn't too recent, and I'm going to throw out a few acronyms, but when the ADS-B mandate came out on January 2nd, I think it was, Bill, was that first of the year?
Yep.
Of course, we dutifully had the ADS-B system installed in the jet I was flying, and I happened to see the bill. It was about $26,000 for the install, so I knew it was on board. Well, the only thing I hadn't asked the tech that installed it all was how to turn it on. So we took off, and the controller is Washington Center out in the eastern sector there, Nate, and we took off, and the controller said, "I'm not getting any ADS-B information from you." So I thought, well, we do have it on board, and it turned out I just hadn't installed it or hadn't turned it on. And as I'm fiddling with it, trying to get it on, the controller said, "I'm not going to be able to let you into RVSM airspace, the reduced vertical separation minimum airspace, without it." So that meant I could only go to 29,000 feet, and I'd filed for 45,000 feet. So after a couple minutes of realizing that I was the weakest link in the chain, I did figure out how to get it turned on, and we moved on. But looking back on it, in the space of a couple minutes, I dealt with avionics, I dealt with ATC, and I dealt with my own aging brain, flying airplanes for 40 plus years, and kind of made me realize that it's good to put your priorities in the right place.
Yeah, I would think so. But as you said, it's the human factor, and we all can confess to areas where we have lacked in that, or made a mistake, or overlooked something, or that type of thing, and have been fortunate that we were able to not have an incident, or whatever the case may be. Coming back to you, Bill, you guys, one of the things that I think Garmin is known best for, besides the sophistication of your avionics for aircraft, is the ease of use and the flow of using them, which I think translates directly to, if you're on a busy instrument, under busy instrument flight rules, in a busy situation, weather is not great, et cetera, and so forth, the easier it is, the better. You in the development phase of that, and all aspects that you've dealt with, was that something that was a priority on the front burner?
Absolutely. Just basic principles. And, we serve a wide part of the market from the large biz jets down to Cessna 172s and Piper Cherokees, where the pilot may only fly that once every week or two. So we try to instill within our engineers that usability, simplicity, make the pilot's job easier, and therefore you make a safer pilot. So always been very fundamental in our designs.
Yeah, that's a great point that you brought about people not always flying. Like, we always think of it as you're flying every other day or several times a week, but there's some people that fly a couple times a month. And so for them to be able to come back to something and not have to completely relearn it, that's a really, really great point that you bring up. While we're talking about Garmin International, a lot of people, and I'm talking about Brandon and Shane and others who are still in the early stages of their career, or are still in school and that type of thing, fly these aircraft all the time with Garmin, and usually a Garmin 1000 and a 172 and things of that nature. And we kind of take that as, it's kind of like our kids growing up now, and a cell phone. If you don't have a cell phone, there's something wrong with you. And I think in many aircraft, if you don't have Garmin in there, it's like, oh, where'd you get the airplane from? So I think that Garmin has become natural. And the reason I point that out, though, and the reason I bring that point up is that I think that a lot of people don't realize the scope of a company like Garmin, and how much Garmin puts into designing and developing these kind of avionics, which brings me to the point of opportunities there at Garmin and different things. What are some of the different things that you can somebody that's in school, maybe they don't have enough hours yet to fly professionally, but they've studied engineering, et cetera. What type of opportunities do they have at a Garmin?
We we have values in vertical integration, so we try to be involved in as much of the process as we can as we develop our products. So within Garmin, obviously, we have a very large engineering team that are designing our products and manufacturing that produces the products, but we also have a very large flight test and certification facilities. We have over 20 company aircraft. So we not only design the products, but we have pilots that go out and fly and test the products and help the engineers refine, close that loop, so we can continuously improve the product before we actually put it to production. We have sales guys that a certain kind of personality loves to sell things, right? And all of our sales guys are pilots, right? So they got their start in the business. Maybe they were washing airplanes at an FBO and got their pilot's license, and they're selling avionics now. And we have our marketing communications, our advertising, if you will. And again, a lot of pilots there. So there are many, many aspects of the business other than just flying an airplane are, work hand in hand in our aviation business.
So I just graduated from Embry-Riddle or Purdue or UND or whatever, and I have my aeronautical science degree, and I have 700, 800 hours of flying, and so I'm not quite there yet. And then there's this pandemic thing, et cetera, and so forth. And I'm looking for something else, but I want to stay in aviation. If I wanted to go into sales at Garmin, as an example, what do you guys look for in a person that might be applying for a position like that?
A strong aviation background, understanding the customer, understanding the customer's needs. A good outgoing personality is obviously a plus with some business acumen.
That nails it, huh?
Hey, Vince.
Yes, go ahead.
Something that I've been researching lately with a class that I'm in that relates to Garmin that surprised me, because I always think about scientific things and technology, is the human factor side of it. Bill, is that true that you guys maybe have people that are doing research on psychology type things for using the equipment and making it simpler, like we're saying, maybe pilot's orientation to the buttons and memory, retention, just psychology instead of science all the time?
Absolutely. We have a very large department of human factors, and many things that you describe 100% accurate, where these are more scientists, if you will, studying the human psyche, how the human being interacts with technology. And we support that with laboratories, with simulators, and we can rapidly prototype things and have our human factors folks evaluate and recommend change. And so all that goes into the science of designing the products.
Would you recommend someone like Shane, who is a junior, considering looking at an internship, say next summer or something like that at Garmin, to explore that side of the industry?
Absolutely. We have a large intern program, and that's actually been quite successful for us, where we bring folks in, right, that junior in school comes in, and it helps us expand our workforce, but it also helps the students really find out where it is they want to steer their career. So we have across Garmin, not just in the aviation segment, but in all segments, we have very large intern programs, and that's turned out to be quite successful for us.
So Shane, there you go. You've heard some things about Garmin International and about air traffic control and some of the opportunities with that. What's your perspective now?
There's a lot of ways I could go, and I was just going to ask Bill, like, what, if I were to, pursue an internship, what kind of, like, is it like an all-in-one program, or could I go like separate ways, or how does that work? And if I were to hope maybe pursue an internship with the company.
Not sure if I fully follow that. Typically it would be a focused internship. We do have some interns that have come multiple years, and maybe they started out in the automotive side of the business and decided that wasn't necessarily what they wanted to do, and maybe they went into the fitness section, their second year internship.
Okay.
I think he's saying, if I'm understanding Shane correctly, within the aviation side, are there several different areas in the aviation side, or when you become an intern, are you just in a program? In other words, do you float, or do you just go into a specific discipline within the discipline?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
It'd typically be within a single discipline for that year's internship.
Okay. So like aviation, I would just go in and learn all the different aspects of what Garmin does with aviation.
No, it'd probably be a little more focused than that. If it could be within human factors, it could be within software engineering, based on your background. I think that'll really help steer where it might make sense.
Okay, great. It's definitely an interest and something I'd like to look into.
We're waiting for your application.
Perfect.
I was about to say, not to trying to do this all on a show, but if somebody like Shane is interested in that, the application process, is it starting now for next year, or is it starting at the beginning of 21 for next summer, or how does that work?
I don't know the answer to that right now.
Okay, sorry, didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Can certainly find out for you.
Yeah, no problem. Shane, did you have any other questions to either? And speaking of that, in terms of internships, and I know things are a little bit different right now, but for air traffic, do you guys have an internship program?
No, not that I know about in air traffic, but there's one far administrative, like at headquarters in DC. Air traffic, I think they did away with that internship years ago.
Okay.
So I don't know if they may have something out there, but I do not know of.
What about an apprenticeship program? Anything like that?
No, they did away with a lot of those programs in the past, I guess, 10, 15 years.
So one of the things that you brought up, you mentioned again pre-show before we went live, you mentioned that the technology is definitely changing. All of us in aviation know that technology for air traffic control is becoming a lot more modern, and as a result of that, the type of controller or the job that the controller does is becoming a lot different. Do you have recommendations about that in terms of, so somebody's in school, they're in a flight training aeronautical science program, they're minoring in air traffic. Should they also be cognizant of the fact that they need to have more technical knowledge? Do you guys look for that because you are moving into next gen?
No, I think most of the kids these days, they are pretty tech savvy, and
Okay.
far as having the ability to learn, I guess. It's different from you and I. They're tech savvy. Most of the kids these days are really tech savvy. So I don't think what they get in school, if you have a 4-year degree, most of the 4-year degree programs have probably maybe 4 or 5 units of computer science or some type of information systems technology. So I think they're ready with BS if they come out with a BS. Most of these college programs they're covering that. So
Yeah. JJ, you've had a lot of professional flying experience. I mean, a ton, both domestic and international. Anything we've not covered in terms of your perspective on air traffic control, air traffic management?
Well, I just think that we don't realize how good we have it here. The ability to file a flight plan, an instrument flight plan, minutes before you take off, and it goes into the system, and your routing is there. You get cleared as filed. Of course, the less traffic we have right now, the more cleared as filed we get. But it doesn't work that way. I've flown in some countries where if you miss your departure slot by 5 minutes, you can't reapply for another 24 hours. And we've got an excellent system here.
Yeah, absolutely. Brandon and Shane, you guys are in the, well, Brandon, you're already at the CFI, Certified Flight Instructor level, and Shane, you're working your way up. Can you guys imagine doing your flight training not having the Garmin avionics in your cockpits?
No, sir, I certainly could not. I appreciate on the multi-function display there, being able to see my little blue airplane and all the black dots that are dangerous around it. So I couldn't imagine not having that. I try to look out and see the planes the best I can, but man, they're hard to spot up there. So those avionics are a huge help to us. Yeah.
Shane, how about you?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I have the utmost appreciation for it because I did the majority of my private training in a six-pack and a Comanche, actually. So, you know, having experienced that and then going to like the G1000, it's a complete game changer. I'm happy that I'll also know how to like fly the steam gauges and kind of know how that works as well. But then it really makes you appreciate, and you can really see the differences when you fly with something like the G1000. It's just a completely different game changer. And really,
JJ, you've done a lot of instruction with both. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you, Shane.
good.
You've done a lot of instruction with both steam gauges and Garmin 1000s, et cetera. Well, you know, share with us what your thoughts are about that.
Well, from the pilot standpoint and safety standpoint, it is easy to get wrapped around the axle with the large array of avionics that we have in front of us. I think the biggest danger is for a student learning to fly, you're there to learn to handle the airplane, but it's so easy to get caught up in what's going on in front of you. I like to tell my students that the airplane came along in 1903 with the Wright brothers, and there wasn't radios installed until Marconi came along in 1929. So there were 26 relatively good years of learning to fly the airplane. And my advice to students starting out, they get in there and they see all those things. And like you were saying, Nate, the younger generation is geared to this sort of thing. They're growing up with iPads, but I like them to learn the stick and rudder first, and then I say we'll talk about the fancy stuff later. I will admit that I have students in their late teens and early 20s right now in the flight instructing I do on the side that are picking up the new avionics faster than I am, and I'm willing to concede the point on that. But there's some great stuff out there, but we got to remember to fly the airplane first.
Yeah. Bill, you're in the business of selling the new avionics, but can you share your perspective about this too?
Yeah, it's always it's a balancing act, right? So we want to have as much information in front of us as we can, but there's always the possibility for information overload and focusing too much on technology, and sometimes you got to drop the mic and fly the plane, right? It's that's first and foremost.
When in doubt, fly. Yeah.
That's it. Airplane flies because of Bernoulli, not Marconi, right?
Well, and I think the other big part as a pilot, I was taught that a very long time ago, the when in doubt, just fly the plane. But the other part of it is that you could lose your electrical, you could lose all your avionics, and you know, what are you going to do? Are you going to just stop flying? So I think points are well taken about being able to just fly and then enjoy the accoutrements of having all of the great avionics that we do. And I'll throw it to you, Nate, and say that just to see if you had any other take on that from the controller's perspective. Actually, I was going to ask you, Nate, if you have any pet peeves. This is a great time, especially to tell these young pilots any particular pet peeve that controllers in general have with pilots.
Oh boy.
No, well, no, well, I can't speak for that because of I'm sure they have a lot of them, but I haven't worked traffic in probably 15 years, so
well, let me take out the pet peeve and just say preferences.
I guess communication, listening is even professional and the inexperience is the listening.
Yeah.
That's probably, communication is probably the biggest and the pet peeve.
Yeah, following the instructions.
Yes, and that's
Yeah.
always an issue, and especially when it comes to readback. Readback errors are really big in the air traffic world.
Well, I think some pilots, and I'll get myself in trouble maybe saying this, but I do think some pilots try to memorize what they're being told. My thing has always been to write it down on my knee pad, and therefore I can reference it, and especially if it's very specific instructions in dense airspace, or you're under you're in your IFR, instrument flight rules, and you definitely want to be on point with it. And it does. I do know. I'll say it for you, Nate, that it irritates controllers when your readback, is missing some things.
Mm-hmm.
And all, that also has to do with how fast your plane is moving through the airspace and how busy it is. Right,
Yes.
JJ?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So JJ's just sitting there looking at it. He's like, yeah, I've done some instrument training with Vince. Yeah, he knows he's learned some things.
You told me not to talk about that.
Yeah, I know.
Well, from air traffic control standpoint and an avionics standpoint, one of the most important pieces of advice I would give as an instructor is never fly your airplane through airspace where your mind hasn't been there 5 minutes before. And it's
fly ahead of the plane.
Absolutely. It's easy to get behind the 8-ball, and all of a sudden you're 5 miles from the airport going 250 knots and you don't have an approach clearance yet. So been there.
Yeah.
I guess
Brandon,
one pet peeve.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I guess one pet peeve, another pet peeve, it would be for the pilots to assume that they're the only ones in the sky. When
we're not.
Like for instance, you're a Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Wednesdays around the holidays, you think that you're the only one going from Teterboro to to Florida. You're the only person leaving the East Coast going to Florida in the wintertime.
I think we have all that have flown have heard pilots where they do sound like they think they're the only one up there. And it's like, really? You got company. Take a look. Yeah, that's a really good point. Shane and Brandon, we're going to start wrapping up. Did you guys have any other questions or comments about air traffic, the interface of air traffic and avionics related to Garmin?
Yeah, I did kind of have a question. I guess it's kind of for both Bill and Nate, but what are there any new next gen things that y'all are working on, say a visual like a visual text of clearances being given and in the Garmin display? Say, is there a way, are y'all working on giving a full clearance and then maybe just pressing a button of accepting the clearance instead of having to talk more on the radio? Is there anything of that in the works, and how far along that is? I was just curious about that.
Go ahead and admit, Shane, you want to know if the Autoland system is going to be available soon so that you can push the button. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, and I'll let Bill answer that.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. We're going through a transition right now. We call it next gen.
Mm-hmm.
There's no better name for it, I guess. But so many of the technologies that we use in aviation right now, the AM voice radios and radar and ground-based navigation, these things have been around since World War II and the 1950s. It's old technology, and we're in a transition. It's going to take some time to get through that transition, but there's kind of 3 pillars of next gen. One of those is ADS-B, Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast. It's aviation. We love acronyms. It's our secret handshake, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But going just from a radar blip on the air traffic controller's scope to highly accurate GPS position being broadcast by the aircraft to air traffic control to give very accurate positioning for air traffic controlling, and that helps with separation and efficient movement of traffic and everything. So that's one pillar. what they call performance-based navigation. We all call it GPS, but that's okay. Performance-based navigation, again, getting away from reliance on the ground-based nav aids. Been around since ADF since the 20s, and VOR since the 50s. The technology served us well, but there is better technology out there. So the second pillar is performance-based nav, which enables much more accurate navigation and control of the aircraft. The third is datacom, is what we call it, and that'll be transitioning from voice communication on a share where everybody's on the same channel, and you have to, you can't raise your hand, so you have to try and butt in to be able to communicate and ensure that that radio call really was for me. It wasn't for another aircraft out there. And going to datacom, to put it simply, it kind of puts text messaging in place between the pilot and air traffic control. So very efficiently, they can communicate very well back and forth, but as importantly, as efficiently, very accurately. So things aren't lost in the translation between the aircraft and ATC and from ATC to the aircraft. And once you get a full route clearance, we all love to get those. When full route clearance, instead of punching it into the box, to be able to hit an accept button and your flight plan is automatically populated. So we're in that transition right now. The initial stages are at towers at, I believe, around 59 or 60 airports right now.
Okay.
And the heavies are using this right now to get clearances before they push. Get them very accurately. They accept that clearance, and they don't have to tie up the radio to do that. The en route rollout started last year, and unfortunately it's been slowed down for numerous reasons, but we actually do have preliminary en route services in both Kansas City and Memphis Center. And once we get back to normal, then we'll continue to roll that out. And as the infrastructure's there, the heavies, the airliners, the big cargo birds like FedEx and UPS will be using that, and we'll see that move into the smaller aircraft, like the 172s at Embry-Riddle. We'll seek to get there. We're in that transition, and we'll get there soon.
Interesting.
You see, Sean, that your thought Shane, your thought process makes you a great candidate for an internship at Garmin.
Oh, there.
If I may say so.
There you go.
because
I will say,
you
Bill,
brought up something that's futuristic. It's the next step in terms of technology. As Bill said, spot on. I was joking around about it, but you were right on point. So that's really kind of cool to hear you bring something up and hear all of the things that Bill said Garmin are already moving forward with.
Yeah, I've always been very interested in that aspect of transitioning from voice to textual, like communication with ATC.
Yeah,
We should have done that 10 or 20 years ago, it seems like, right?
As we wrap up, Nate, two things. One, on the technology side, where is air traffic right now with the technology transition to next gen, specific with like Washington Center? Are you guys fully automated? I mean, not fully automated, but are you fully integrated with the technology yet? Or are you still on your way?
Bill hit upon pretty much all the things that we're working on. The datacom, PBN, all that is in play right now. Another part of that is we're using some of that trajectory things, that some of the next gen stuff that has to do with metering, as far as time-based metering and trajectory based navigation, as far as helping the system out, as far as metering is concerned. So on my side, so we are doing metering things that in the traffic management world that's pretty much next gen.
Okay, and do you have any closing advice for our aspiring young aviation professionals?
I would say go anything in aviation, you're in good hands.
That's
if
true.
you're in good hands at anything in aviation, because it's all future. It's a great career. I would have never known that I would have lasted almost 30 years in doing this job. So it's a great career to get into.
Well, thank you. How about you, Bill? Closing advice?
Yeah, I echo what Nate says. Aviation is a wonderful career. It's, you know, I think the best thing you can do is find a career where you look forward to going to work every day. And I think most people in aviation can say that. And I don't know how many other careers really hold that kind of excitement for people that are in it. It's really pretty good stuff.
JJ, if you're missing in action, your wife always knows where she can find you. You're either up in the cockpit or you're out at your hangar.
Thanks to ADSB, she can put a ping on, and if I take off, she'll get an automatic notification. My biggest piece of advice is keep up with technology. I probably spend an hour a day when I wake up just looking at new stuff and trying to comprehend what's out there. Not only in the airplanes that I'm flying, things are changing, but technology that's becoming available thanks to people like Bill that are getting up early in the morning and introducing new concepts for the cockpit.
Absolutely. Well, if you gentlemen don't have any other questions for our professional guests, we can kind of wrap things up here. And there we go. So I'd really like to thank everybody for being on the show today. That does it for this week's All Things Aviation webcast. We hope those of you watching, as well as our aspiring young aviation professionals, found some information and insight from our seasoned aviation professional guests, both helpful and inspiring. Next Thursday, we will tackle another very specialized area in aviation law, with 3 of the top aviation attorneys in the industry. So on behalf of the Bob Hoover Legacy Foundation, our president, Tracy Forrest, and chairman, Michael Herman, I'd like again to thank everybody very much for watching and supporting the Bob Hoover Legacy Foundation initiative of RA Bob Hoover. And everyone have a good one. Take care. I'm Vince Mickens.
Thank you.
Thank you.